Now, in a really interesting shift from Dr. Aaron Mutualedi's position at the Home Office, Leon Schreiber is actually arguing that his focus as Home Office Minister would be to pursue work visas that allow foreigners, especially, come into South Africa and help build the economy. Let's listen to his strategy as a new Home Office boss, and I'll be back for some really interesting analysis explaining why South Africa has become the choice place for many retirees from the West to retire. In other words, South Africa has become the most interesting zone for many retirees, especially from the West, who want to retire after many years of work.
But before we get into that, congratulations. Perhaps tell us about what you're wanting to focus on post your swearing in tomorrow as one of your key priorities. Why today you're being sworn in? Why the focus on work visas as your priority?
Good morning, Naledi, and thank you very much for the kind wishes. As we all know, this is a portfolio with a mountain of work, but I've got my boots on, so I'm ready to tackle that. Yes, indeed. I mean, the visas issue is one among many of the priorities we need to tackle in this department. I think the first and most important one of those is getting the basics right. And those basics relate not only to the processing of visas that can serve as an economic catalyst for South Africa in places where we have scarce skills or people with exceptional skills, but also in the day-to-day operations. And I think this is the most important place for us to start this conversation, because I think most South Africans understand the problems at Home Affairs on the basis of the endless queues that they sometimes face, on the basis of this terrible South Africanism called system offline. And I really am very passionate about starting with those kind of basics. I want the system to be online. I don't want it to be offline. I want the queues to shorten and eventually to be defeated altogether. And those are things that you tackle with business process reforms, with investments in IT infrastructure and upgrading the network and the capacity of Home Affairs offices. And then, of course, also on the other side, speeding up the processing of some of these critical economic enablers, including things like critical skills visas, where, I serve on the Council of Stellenbosch University, for example, and we have lost academics who had to leave the country, who had specific skills that we wanted to transfer to South Africans, but they had to leave the country because they were not able to get the documents they needed. Those are the kind of economic impacts that we can have if we tackle this issue. And more broadly, we can restore dignity to the experience of Home Affairs. I think that for me is really the fundamental point. Home Affairs is what makes us all South African. Yeah. We get our ID documents there. It's the first government department we interact with when our parents go to collect our birth certificates. And it is also the last one that touches our lives if our loved ones have to go and collect a certificate when we pass away. So it's fundamentally about dignity and our identity.
It's interesting because it's almost hard not to make the juxtaposition between what you're putting forward as your priority to get work visas and skills into the country when your predecessor, for instance, just now on the 18th of June, lost in an appeal in court there. This is in the ZEP matter, right? So I'm keen to hear your view on what we do about ZEPs. At the moment, those permits are up until, 2025? Would you want to extend them? It's been quite a hot potato issue in the run-up to these elections.
Look, I think we have to approach all of these things on the basis of what our Constitution tells us. And you'll see in the Statement of Intent for the Government of National Unity as well, that this is a government, even though it's made up of multiple parties, that will ground itself in what the Constitution and the rule of law says. Now, the courts have spoken on the particular way in which this matter has been handled. I will obviously need some time to go and review the processes and what some of the missteps were in this regard. But I think the fundamental point to make is that we must uphold the law. On the one hand, that means that obviously where there is fraudulent activity or where people have engaged in corruption to obtain certificates, or have corrupted that system that you mentioned, that is something that there will need to be consequences for. And we must uphold the law in that space. But just as much on the other side, we also have to look at the way in which people who try to get legal paperwork are being failed by processes within the department. And that is something where some of the major problems and court cases actually emanate from, because you cannot punish a person when the department itself has failed to facilitate what may have started as a legal application.
Just allow
and
me
so
to
that's
step
the
in.
balance that we're going to get.
Brilliant. What do you guys think? Neil Debe actually praises this new Home Office Minister, Leon Schreiber, and actually praises him as a man of action, that he actually already has a lot of things already planned. And the first 100 days, he's sure that there will be a really interesting turn of, the character of Home Office in South Africa, which has been really problematic. A lot of people have complained about the Home Office, the policies by the Home Office, immigration, and all that. And we're hoping to see probably the will be some improvement. We know that Leon Schreiber here from this video argues that one of his major focus would be work visas to try to get skilled workers from abroad, foreigners, to really fill up and help grow the economy of South Africa, claiming that foreigners are actually an economic bull for the economy, and unlike the Gaten Mackenzie's ideas, which was actually, although Gaten Mackenzie actually or usually push for deportation of illegal foreigners, but in this instance, Leon Schreiber, I think, is not for that deportation, but rather he wants to try to find a way to even probably allow the ones that are illegal to have legality, but also open the doors for really vital, foreign workforce to help build South Africa's economy. But I really found a really interesting article explaining why foreigners are really flocking to retire in South Africa and what's the reason, what's driving that, you see. So it argues that thousands of foreign nationals have actually chosen South Africa as their retirement destination, with many of them leaving some notable first world countries such as the United Kingdom, China, Germany, and the United States. Really interesting. It goes on to say that in a parliamentary question and answer last year, Aaron Motsoaledi, the former Home Office boss, actually was asked to provide the total number of retirement visa applications received and approved, as well as the countries from which most of those applicants actually came from. And, Motsoaledi actually responded that, his response actually revealed that South Africa has actually received approximately 3,645 retirement visa applications from foreigners residing in 112 countries. So South Africa is really becoming favorable once more for retirees. You see, all that long years of hard work wants to be actually spent in South Africa. Really interesting. So he argues that also that out of a total of 3,645 visa applications, 1,645 has actually been approved. So South Africa is actually, about to, anyway, since Aaron has actually left, but now they're still processing right now 1,645 retirees from many developed nations will be storming South Africa for retirement, okay? And remember that most of these retirees would need a workforce that would actually need to prop up, that whole critical mass of, dependent, so to speak. Although they'll be coming with a lot of financing, with a lot of funds, but they'll still be needed for a workforce that actually supports them. Just kind of like the disaster, the baby boomers in the West actually caused many of these societies, especially in Scandinavia where I live, where there's a insufficient workforce to carry the baby boomers now that they're aging. So now in South Africa, anyway, where we might see something like that, it might be a positive move anyway, because it will now open doors for new forms of employment, new forms of business opportunities that would help prop up these new retirees and try to utilize the finance and the funds, the monetary value they bring into the economy, despite the fact that they wouldn't be actively working to contribute to building the economy of South Africa, but they'll be building the economy in a different way. So really interesting changes going on. It actually also argues that the data also reveals that the top 5 countries for retirement visa applications are UK, China, Germany, USA, and Bangladesh, which account for 1,824 of the total applications, right? And also it says that, interestingly, the notable applications have also been received from European countries such as Switzerland, which is 150, Netherlands 124, Sweden 27, indicating a diverse range of applicants. So adding to this, while commenting to the latest visa backlog numbers, it says that the minister actually argues that that another 1,686 retired persons visas had yet to be processed, meaning that the number of applications from foreigners wanting to retire in South Africa sits at well over 5,000. Wow, that's really interesting. So the article now asks, why South Africa? What's making South Africa really attractive to retirees? What's it with all the whole problems in South Africa? We've been analyzing all these days. You see, many people calling South Africa the murder capital of the world. Taking over from El Salvador, Nayib Bukele's El Salvador, lots of crime, rape, gang violence, and all that. Why is South Africa still attractive as a place for retirees from the West to really retire? It's really interesting to understand. So let's go. It argues that despite facing numerous challenges such as load shedding, high crime rates, poor governance, South Africa continues to be viewed as an appealing retirement option for foreigners, especially in Gauteng. So the same Gauteng now that's actually going through a lot of crisis with the DA and ANC trying to settle for power sharing and all that. Gauteng still remains a popular retirement zone for many retirees from the West or developed countries. It argues that although the Western Cape has also experienced a surge in demand for property from foreign buyers in recent years, and that Gauteng is still the most populated province in the country with 15.8 million inhabitants, it says that, however, only 9.5 million people who live in Gauteng were born in the province. In contrast, 11.6 million people of KwaZulu-Natal's 12.4 million permanent residents were born in the province, right? So Gauteng might be a zone that's actually almost, one of the largest in the country, but it's made up of a lot of people who were not born in Gauteng. A lot of the population of Gauteng is made up of people that were not born there, all right? So it says that Gauteng is clearly a migration and semi-migration hub, with roughly a third of residents coming from other areas. Now, overall, 1.1 million people born outside of the country live in Gauteng, which is far more than the 368,000 foreigners living in the Western Cape, which comes second place. Now, it says that the most sought after locations for retirees in South Africa are the major urban centers, including Cape Town and Johannesburg. And it says that these cities boast of substantial expatriate retiree communities, especially from the United Kingdom. Additionally, there are other slightly more economical options with significant expat retirement population, such as the Garden District along the southern coast, in Durban, in Knysna, in Krugersdorp, and in Surtfield. Now, it also goes on to say that South Africa also features numerous retirement villages, with those in Cape Town being particularly popular among foreign retirees. And South Africa is now a popular retirement destination, largely due to its warm climate, picturesque landscapes, and affordable living costs. However, many immigration specialists highlight the main reason for this move of many of these retirees is the standard of living. All right. So when they come in with their euros, with their dollars, it actually appears that whatever it is they come in when they make the exchange, it's able to give them a decent life in living, as unlike in their own countries. So it's really interesting anyway that South Africa has become an interesting place for retirement for many people from the developed countries. One of the things I usually think about in terms of this kind of news is, I see a lot of opportunities for innovation, especially innovators who would likely, take advantage of this critical mass of people. It's actually expected that probably this year or before the end of next year, there will be 5,000 retirees coming from developed nations. Especially if all the processing goes on successfully, there'll be 5,000 people who will be wishing to retire in South Africa. And so that critical mass of dependence, on an economy. I believe, although we might claim that, because they come in with their retirement benefits and retirement funds, they might not be dependent on the economy. But in terms of electricity, water, and all that, that's a weight that would need to be carried by the economy of South Africa. And although most of the finances coming from their retirement would prop up that a lot, we're really hoping that the leadership could actually take advantage of that, and probably, especially in terms of, I've read somewhere that South Africa is kind of like that kind of society where there's this notion of, support within the home. So in other words, having a housemates or sorts of different forms of assistance within homes is actually a really common thing in South Africa. So that could be another avenue to provide forms of job if respectful agreements can actually be reached by certain of these maybe middlemen. There could actually be an innovation in this regard, could actually come from a position of middlemen who manage the agreement between the retirees and these assistants, you see, so to speak. And so that could actually be one of the ways where new jobs would actually be reached, and new avenues to raise taxes could actually also help to the ANC, the government of national unity at the moment, prop up its budget and meet up for some of the many demands which South Africa demands, especially in terms of service delivery at the moment. But I don't know, what do you guys think about this news? It's really interesting for me to really see that South Africa is really attractive for retirement. But share your thoughts in the comments.